In this video, we shall delve into the epic tale of the brave Mamluks who stood tall in the face of this colossal threat and defied all odds to save the Ummah from its utter annihilation. But before we begin, we kindly ask you to consider showing your support for the channel by liking, sharing and subscribing. Additionally, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below, as this would boost us in the algorithm. Jazakallahu khairan. First, a little context. Just in the early 13th century, the Ayyubid dynasty of Egypt was under the threat of the Crusaders. In response, they began to search for the most promising young boys to recruit in their ranks, with the intention of creating a new super elite force. Process, the historian Said Ashur writes, the Mamluk was taught a certain type of discipline, education, upbringing, and training so that he would learn the teachings and manners of Islam, and he would grow up not knowing any religion other than Islam. When the Mamluk reached the stage of youth, his master trained him in horsemanship, the use of a spear and the sword, so that he would become a strong knight who could defend his master and himself when needed. While the historian Shafiq Jasser Ahmed Mahmud writes, the Ayyubid sultans and later the Mamluk sultans were concerned with raising their Mamluks in a special way, educating and teaching them the arts of war and combat, and they allocated military barracks in the citadel for this purpose. To give you an example of how intense the training had been, one source claims that they were expected to hit a 95 cm target at a range of 75 meters and to loose 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds. For a year, process and training would pay off as the Mamluk army faced the 7th Crusade. In 1250 Common Era, at the battles of Al-Mansura and Fariskour, they crushed the armies of Louis IX of France. And in the Battle of Fariskour, they captured the king himself. These victories made the Mamluks the most feared army in the region, and they soon took control of Egypt and formed their own dynasty. But their triumphs were short-lived, for a far greater enemy was looming on the horizon. In the 13th century, the Mongol Empire, led by the infamous Genghis Khan, swept through Asia with a fierce and ruthless force, leaving a trail of destruction and death in their wake. Ummah. Hulagu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, targeted the Islamic world, and one of his intended targets was Baghdad, the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate. It existed. It had been a while since it had done anything significant. When the Mongols attacked the Caliphate, the Abbasid Caliph downplayed the threat and failed to respond appropriately. However, he would soon face a rude awakening. As written by the great scholar of Tafsir, Ibn al-Kathir writes, the Tatars surrounded the Caliphate's palace, attacking it from all sides, until a slave girl who was playing with the Caliph and making him laugh, and who was one of his favourites, was hit by an arrow and killed while dancing in front of him. The Caliph was deeply disturbed by this and was extremely alarmed. He brought the arrow that had struck her between his hands and found a message written on it, which wrote, "When Allah wills to fulfill his decree and destiny against the doomed civilization, he takes away the minds of those who had them." We need to understand something here. The Mongols weren't mere barbarians. They studied the culture and religious beliefs of their enemies really well, which made them even more intimidating. Baghdad would fall in February 1258 Common Era. The city was sacked and burned to the ground, leading to the massacre of innocent civilians and the destruction of irreplaceable treasures. The Mongols' disregard for culture and traditions of the conquered lands only fueled their bloodlust. As described by al-Dhahabi, they eliminated its judges, jurists, and scholars, not to mention its majesty and multitude, and they destroyed its schools and mosques and tied up its wells. They made their vast treasuries and libraries a feast for the fire. Ibn Kathir adds that entry into Baghdad was in the latter part of Muharram, and the sword continued to kill its people for 40 days. The exact number of casualties remain unknown, but Ibn Kathir estimates anywhere from 800,000 to 2 million people. As the year 1260 Common Era approached, the Mongols' swift conquests and brutal tactics posed a severe threat to the existence of Islam, causing fear among many Muslims. They now controlled much of Levant, including Damascus and Aleppo. The latter suffered a similar fate to Baghdad. And with the Abbasid Caliphate now fallen, the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt was now the only powerful bastion of Islam left to defend them against the Mongol invasion, and the clash between the two forces was now inevitable. However, unknowingly to the Mongols, they were about to meet their match, as soon they would be up against two of the greatest military generals of their generation. The first was Qutuz, a man of exceptional character who would earn the title Saif ad-Din, and he would become the face of the counter-Mongol movement. Born as Mahmud bin Mahmud into the illustrious Khwarezmian dynasty, Qutuz was forced to flee his homeland when the Mongols swept through Central Asia. After a harrow Egypt and its treasure, and I will break the Tatars, he proclaimed with absolute conviction. His teacher, unable to comprehend the audacity of this young boy, would respond, "Are you crazy?" But Qutuz stood firm and said, "I saw the messenger of Allah claim, one that defied all reason and logic. The Tatars were known to be invincible, and no one dared to stand up to them." Aside from what we've already mentioned above, to further exemplify this, Ibn al-Athir once reported, "A Tatar man entered a district that contained 100 men. He continued to kill them one by one until he eliminated them all. Nobody raised a finger to try to harm him. People were totally submissive and could not defend themselves to any extent whatsoever. We take refuge in Allah from such abasement. Faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This young boy dared to dream of the impossible, not just taking over Egypt, but also defeating the unconquerable. As if to fulfill the ru'ya, the Mongol envoy issued their usual threat to Qutuz and the emirs he had gathered. For the purpose of analysis, we will read the letter in two parts. Part 1 goes like this. From the King of the Kings, in the east and the west, the heavens, know that the victorious King Qutuz, who is of the Mamluk people who fled from our swords to this region, enjoying his generosity and killing those who were in his power thereafter, without justification and for rebellion. Those who have done injustice will learn about their fate. Whoever seeks our war will regret, and whoever seeks our peace will have it. If you obey our terms and follow our orders, you will have what is ours, and you will have what is yours. If you oppose us, you will see what will happen to you. In this instance, the Mongols employed the threat of disgrace and humiliation. Furthermore, they were banking on Qutuz being ignorant of his own religion, accusing Qutuz of rebellion and attempting to deceive him into believing that submitting to them would lead to peace. In response to their demands, Qutuz chose to openly declare war on the Mongols by killing their messengers and displaying their severed heads, viewing it as a chance to display strength and exploit Hulagu's absence. The Mongols were furious by Qutuz's actions and began making preparations for the upcoming battle. On the 15th of Sha'ban, Qutuz gathered his men and the local rulers and inspired them with this following speech. O princes of the Muslims, you have been eating the wealth of the treasury for a long time, while you hate the invaders. As for me, I'm heading for jihad, so whoever chooses to join me, come, and whoever does not can return home. Indeed, Allah is watching, and the sin of the massacred Muslim women will be on the necks of those who lag behind. Next, the Sultan descended with his troops to Gaza and stayed there for a day. He then travelled along the coast to the city of Akka, where the Franks were present at the time, and asked them to be neutral, and swore to them that if any of them, whether a knight or a foot soldier, intended to harm the Muslim army, he would return and fight them before encountering the Tatars. As the Muslims came closer to the Mongols, he gave them one final speech.
للطريق مشاعر الأنوار هم للنسيم عبيره الفوار قادة رفعوا التميز راية هم في العزيمة همة الأنصار هم للطريق مشاعر الأنوار هم للنسيم عبيره الفوار قادة رفعوا التميز راية هم في العزيمة همة الأنصار لبناء جيل رائد بسلاحه علما وروحا للتقدم جاري لبناء جيل رائد بسلاحه علما وروحا للتقدم جاري وبمنهج شرب الأصالة منهما ذاك الكتاب وسنة المختار ذاك الكتاب وسنة المختار للطريق مشاعر الأنوار هم للنسيم عبيره الفوار قادة رفعوا التميز راية، هم في العزيمة همة الأنصار، هم للطريق مشاعل الأنوار، هم للنسيم عبيره الفوار، هم قادة رفعوا التميز راية، هم في العزيمة همة الأنصار.